This lecture continues our discussion of reading disabilities. Here we will discuss the subtypes of reading disabilities. Of the 8 SLD categories, 3 are directly connected to reading: basic reading skills, reading fluency skills, reading comprehension. We can understand the different reading disabilities through the simple view of reading model. As we talked about at the beginning of this class, this model was originally researched by Goff and Tunmer in 1986. The main idea of the model is that reading with comprehension is the product of decoding and listening comprehension. Reading skill depends on both lower-level foundational skills that drive word recognition, including key skills such as phonemic awareness and phonics, and the higher-level aspects of language comprehension, key for comprehension, including vocabulary, background knowledge, and discourse. If either part of the equation is weak, reading comprehension will be negatively impacted. Reading is more than the sum of its parts. Students must decode in order to read words accurately. Students must read words accurately and fluently to comprehend, and they must understand language in order to comprehend what they decode. The end goal of reading is to gain meaning. By teaching these components, students will be well prepared to read and comprehend what they read. The simple view of reading is a helpful model for understanding instructional needs of students and, connected to this, understanding subtypes of poor readers. As Seidenberg notes, both researchers and clinicians are moving towards distinguishing 2 general types of developmental reading impairments, which parallel the 2 components in Philip Goff's simple view. The term dyslexia is being reserved for children whose difficulties center on acquiring basic skills, the print part that is specific to reading. Other children's reading difficulties appear to originate in the language component. These children have spoken language impairments that carry over into reading. End quote, page 154. There are subtypes of poor readers: those who have trouble with the code, dyslexic; those who have trouble with language, hyperlexic; and those who have trouble with both. Goff and Tunmer describe this type as a garden variety reading disability. Others have called this category oral and written language disability, OWL, or a more severe form of dyslexia. The 2 broad categories of reading disability follow the simple view: word recognition impairments and language comprehension impairments are not equally prevalent. About 80 to 90% of reading disabilities fall in the dyslexic category. All children and adults in this category have word recognition problems. Within this category, there are some who would further divide dyslexia into those with a phonological deficit, the biggest group, and those with a fluency or naming speed deficit, but can segment and blend sounds orally or no phonological deficit. About 20% of people in the dyslexic category fit this profile. However, the nature of the relative weakness is debated. People with a phonological deficit generally have worse outcomes than those with only fluency or naming speed deficits. Some reading scientists argue this is more about degree of impairment than a unique category. About 10 to 15% of reading disabilities fall into the hyperlexic category. These are people who have a comprehension deficit. They appear to read individual words better than they can comprehend meaning of the passages they read. Specifically found in students with autism spectrum, vocabulary weaknesses, generalized language learning disorders, and learning disabilities that affect abstract reasoning and logical thinking. Another way to think of the subtypes of reading disability are with overlapping circles. The 3 deficit areas, phonological deficit, fluency naming speed deficit, and language comprehension deficit, are often not distinct but overlap. Children and adults can have one deficit area or multiple concerns. Double or multiple deficits are more common than single deficits. The key is to understand the needs of the struggling reader and match instruction to those needs. Reading disabilities are often accompanied by other areas of concern. Shared cognitive capacities can lead to comorbidity, coexisting, of disability conditions. Common disabilities that coexist with reading disabilities include ADHD. About 30% of children with dyslexia also have ADHD. Dysgraphia, which is faulty pencil grip and letter formation. Dyscalculia, which has to do with math calculations. Speech and language disorders, and anxiety. It is important to remember that reading concerns exist on a continuum. To be considered a disability, the reading concern is significantly impacting school life. Achievement is significantly below peers, despite robust intervention. There is a need for significant intensive instruction, and it's persistent. It does not go away after a little bit of intervention.